Well, if there's one word spoken word poet Shane Koyczan knows very well, it's bullying. His book Stickboy explains his transition from being bullied to becoming a bully. And this Thursday, Stickboy blows its cover and leaps from the page to the stage with its Vancouver Opera premiere at the Vancouver Playhouse. Before the big day, freelance producer Eileen Power met with two teens from the Sarah McLachlan School of Music and librettist Shane Koyczan at the Vancouver Opera's rehearsal hall. It was the first time the teens had seen an opera, but not their first brush with bullying.
Don't be such a wimp, don't be such a whelp, don't be such a wimp, don't be such a whelp, don't be such a crybaby, such a baby.
I thought that the part where they were all converging on the guy and, repeating the same thing, insulting him over and over again, that was pretty powerful because it almost submerses you in the protagonist's role and kind of shows not just being insulted, but psychologically what it's like to have a bunch of people around you all agreeing all together in insulting you or calling it, even if it's not something very big. If there's a bunch of people against you, I think that has a much bigger effect than if you're just being bullied by one guy.
Poor little baby.
There was one moment where it showed a repetition of the protagonist just coming in, and this is the first day he started cutting. He got really upset, threw some things around his room, pulled out an X-Acto knife and started cutting. And then this happened again, and he just, walked off stage, came back in, closed his door. This whole thing happened again where his parents were arguing, threw some things around, he started cutting. It just got worse and worse and worse, and it had this excellent portrayal of a kid who was struggling, angry, afraid, almost every emotion that you would not want to feel. I'm Emmett, and I'm 14.
Heart 15. I was bullied a bit, but, what doesn't kill you make you strong, right?
I felt a bit like that in my grade 4 year. It wasn't the best year because when you're in kindergarten, it's just kind of everybody does their own thing. But once, you get into grade 4, there's a bit more of a social aspect.
I can only tell you how it felt. It felt like moving, suddenly, quickly, and without warning.
My name's Shane Koyczan. I'm a spoken word artist and librettist for the opera Stickboy. It's been quite an amazing process, a challenging process, probably the most challenging project I've ever been a part of. When I first wrote the book Stickboy, it was something that, I just need to get this out there, but having to go back and revisit it so many times is difficult, because it's not a part of my life that was good. It wasn't an easy chapter in my life, to say the least. It was hard looking at the book too, everybody thinks it's you're writing a libretto, but you got the book to work with, no problem. There's no dialogue in the book, so the book takes place almost entirely inside of my head. So they're great companion pieces because if you're gonna check out either, you've got one that's the story is happening just sort of inside of my own head and my own thought processes, and whereas you go to the show, the opera Stickboy, it's very external, and you're starting to see the outside pressures of what these things actually look like. All this show is trying to do is show you how easy it is to go from one end of the spectrum to the other. How easy it was to become something I hated. Because, I'm not innocent in this. A lot of people ask me about bullying and what it felt like and things like that. And it's yeah, of course it felt awful. But you have to understand that I lived the other side of this too. I got to a point where something inside me broke. And I became that thing that was going out there and hurting other people. And so this show, this story, what I wanted to show people was like, you can relate to this on many different levels, because it doesn't take much for you to become something else.
Personally, I have felt so many times, especially in grade 4, the urge to lash out so badly, but I was always able to control it, and that didn't work so well sometimes because it was always just bottled in and bottled in. Then when it did come out, usually no one was around, but it's some of the things just I felt and that I expressed. It's hard to explain. I kept it bottled up for too long, and it just kind of had a small impact on my life for a while, but I've gotten over it. And bullying does happen, and I'm not saying that it needs to happen, but when it does happen, you can't let it control your life. You can't let it stay with you for the whole thing. Like in the opera, people are like, years are like people. They pass by.
Weeks were like people. Eventually, they passed. I did my best to avoid trouble. I was left trying to tiptoe over heavy coins of gold, carefully trying not to disturb whatever horrible dragon was guarding them.
The challenge with the words in the opera was they had to be short, they had to be vowel-y because they needed to be sung, and they had to drive the story forward. So everything needed to... I had to sort of let go of, the poetry that I'm used to writing, which is sometimes complex, and trust that the movement of the show, combined with the animations that are happening, combined with the music, when all of those elements come together, that's what's going to create the poetry. Just working in spoken word and with my own band, I never have to consider that because I'm doing things the way I want to do them, and that's fine. This, you've got four main people really who are all trying to drive home their points about this. So you've got me as the writer, it's my story, and of course I'm going to go to bat for certain things. You've got Neil Weisensel, who's the composer who wrote the music. There's Les Dalla, who's the maestro / musical dramaturg, and then there's Rachel Peake, who's the dramaturg and the director of the show. All of us have visions about what should be happening. And what was incredible about this process for me was it felt more in the spirit of collaboration than it did with each of us competing over, there were some intense arguments for sure, but it didn't dissolve into slamming down books and walking away from the table. We were all just very passionate about telling this story the best way we could, and everybody brought their expertise to it, and their passion and their care shows through in this show, and I think you'll see anybody who comes to it will see that.
Opera was amazing. Almost every scene really had a deep tone and connected with you in some way or another.
If parents want to go, it might be kind of like a little insight into their kids' lives.
In the end, I guess I just hope that the conversation continues to grow. People act like all the time that's like, oh, things like these can't change. No. How long ago was it that women couldn't vote? How long ago is it that, homosexuals couldn't be married? Things can change. People forget that because they're never given the examples of change being made in the world, positive change being made in the world. It requires our participation. And that's the only thing that's ever really been necessary for change.
Wow, some of the sounds from the rehearsal of the new opera Stickboy, and it is a collaboration with spoken word artist Shane Koyczan, who you heard there, and composer Neil Weisensel. And it is described as bravely autobiographical and beautifully poetic. Stickboy confronts the uncomfortable reality of a society struggling with its own fear and insecurity, a society that seeks conformity and uniformity at the expense of those who are different. It sounds like a very powerful piece of opera, and the Vancouver Opera's brand new production opens this Thursday at the Vancouver Playhouse and runs through until November the 7th.